Welcome to the 5th SkelForm tutorial, where we will be going over styles. I'll be using the Chibington sample from the 4th tutorial, but you can follow along with your own character. In the very first tutorial, I briefly went over how the style system worked, and I mentioned that it can be used for skins and outfits. Even though I glossed over it in that tutorial, we'll now be going over it in detail, and I will be adding 3 new styles which we can toggle individually to give Chibington some new outfits. We can start by creating a new style, and I'll call this one pants since we'll be adding the pants first. And let's import one of the new textures from the new skeleton folder. And for this one, I will pick the left leg. Now, if we were to close the styles model, we'll see that nothing has visually changed yet. And this is because there are two requirements that we haven't met yet. First of all, we need to make sure that the texture is the same name of the one that we want to replace. So in our case, if we want to replace the leg textures, we will need to check which textures they're using first. So in the case of the left leg, it's limb, and in the case of the right leg, it's also the limb. So we will need to change the texture name to limb as well to match it. Now I mentioned that there are 2 rules and we have satisfied one, but there is one more. You can change the order of styles. So in this case, we can put the pants above the default style. And this matters because the texture that's being used will be based on the order. So in this case, for example, since pants appears first, then this limb texture will be used over the default. If we were to close the styles model now, we'll see that it does apply. Now there is another problem with the left arm, and this is related to using the same limb texture, but we can fix this by changing it to something else. In this case, for example, we'll change it to the arm texture, which previously went unused, but now if we change it, we can see that it does go back to the normal purple self. What we can do now is toggle between the pants. So for example, as you keep clicking the pants style, you'll see that the pants constantly keep changing between the default and the new one. And this is the basis of the style system. As we keep adding more styles, we'll be able to toggle all of them individually and be able to mix and match the outfits. The next style we'll create is for the hat. So let's add the new hat texture. This. And once again, make sure it aligns with the default one. So in this case, it's capital, and capitalization does matter. So let's put the H, and of course, let's order it back up. So let's put it at the top. And there we go. Almost. You'll see here that it looks a bit chopped. It looks like it was cropped a little. And this is because right now, the hat texture, although it's using the new one, is still retaining its mesh. So if you go to the edit vertices, and if you check it out, you'll see that it's still using the original. So what we need to do instead is we need to create a new bone and have that bone be used exclusively for this new hat. So let's try to do that. We'll create a new bone, call this skeleton hat, since that's the name of the new one. Put it just below the default one. And from here, what we can do is go back to the styles and let's give this one a different name. So in this case, I'll call this skeleton hat. And then we'll change the default hat back to the default one. And then we'll set this one to the new one. So if we put it here, and let's just position both of them correctly. Okay. Now, there's an immediate issue, which is that now Chibington is wearing both hats. So the way that we can fix this is with another trick. Now over here we have a skeleton hat. However, it's obviously not going to replace the default hat since it's still using the default hat name. What we can do is when we click new, instead of immediately importing, we can create an empty texture. And with this empty texture, we will call this one hat. So now, if we check it out, we'll see that the default hat mysteriously disappeared. And this is because right now, the default hat is actually still using a texture. It just happens to be one that doesn't show anything because it's only a 1 by 1 pixel and it's transparent. So visually, it looks no different to simply not wearing the hat. And instead, Chibington is now using the new hat, which is using a different bone, so it appears like a normal texture, and it's not using any mesh. The last style we will now add is for the coat. So let's create yet another one, and I'll just call this coat. Of course, move it up again here, and maybe adjust the pants as well. Now, let's import the one should be torso, yes. And as usual, actually it already works. But there is another thing I want to do, which is to remove the bow tie, because for this particular outfit, I don't want it to have a bow tie. So just like with before, what we can do is go to the new style, create an empty texture. We'll call this bow tie, exactly as it is in the default texture. And if we check now, we'll see that the bow tie miraculously disappeared. And if we were to toggle the coat, we'll see that the bow tie now reappears again, because when we disable the coat, now it's not using the new bow tie texture, which is essentially invisible. It goes back to using the default style. Now you will notice an obvious issue, which is that, of course, the arms are still using their default counterparts. We can just quickly fix that by, first of all, setting... Okay, so left arm already has the arm texture, but right arm, let's set that to the arm texture as well. So right now it's using the purple variant, but of course we can go back to the new style, import the left arm texture, and I'll just call this the arm so it aligns. And if we check now, we'll see that it's using the full coat outfit now. So with this setup, here's what we can do. We can toggle all of these parts individually. So this is what the entire outfit looks like, but let's say that we only want the hat. What we can do is just disable the pants and coat, and there we go. We only have the hat. Or let's say that we only want the coat without the new pants and the hat. There we go. And of course the same thing with pants. And so now you can pretty much customize it however you want. And this is how the style system works. While we're still talking about styles, I do want to mention a few things about textures. So the first thing is that you can drag the textures to other styles. For example, if I wanted to move the new torso over to the default style, I can actually do that immediately. So just drag the texture to whichever style you want, and it will automatically be moved. It will be over here. They have the same name, so it's still there. The other thing is, if you check the SkelForm hat image, you'll see that there's a bit of padding on the hat itself. Over to the left and even the top side, there's actually a bit of transparent pixels. Now, if you're importing textures, you may want to have this removed. Sometimes you do want to keep it, but in the case that you want it to be removed and you want to make sure that the image occupies all of the space, you can right-click on the texture and you can click on Trim. What this will do is literally trim all of the transparent pixels from the edges of the image, and so now the hat itself occupies the entire resolution. Now, as you saw in the back there, it did enlarge the hat image because now it takes up more of its own space. So of course you can adjust that by just making it smaller in this case, putting it back here, and there we go. Now it's adjusted. One final note I would like to add for styles is that you cannot animate which ones are toggled. So if you went, for example, to any animation, for example, in our case, the running one, if I were to, let's say, toggle any style like coat or pants, you'll see that nothing actually gets added and the styles are not going to be toggled from this frame. And this is because the style system is meant to be interacted with mostly through code. When you're making a game, and as you are coding the game, you are supposed to change the styles programmatically. The reason for this is a technical one, because the way that the runtimes are designed, the way that SkelForm's code is designed when you are running these animations, is that styles are managed separately. They're not part of the animation implementation or the animation workflow. So if you want to have an animation where the style is being changed mid-animation, you would need to implement that from within the game itself through code, but that will come as a tutorial for another time. However, you can still change the textures individually. So in this case, for example, if I wanted to change the hat, Let's say, for example, I wanted to just mysteriously remove the skeleton hat in the middle of the animation. You'll see that it does actually get registered, and if we were to play the animation now, you'll see that it does go from appearing to disappearing and all that. So the same thing would apply if you did it to any other texture. For example, for the head, if I decided to just randomly remove it, it would actually still work. So you can still do it for individual textures, you just can't do it for styles. That'll be all for this tutorial. We've covered everything that Styles has to offer, like mixing and matching the textures to create different skins and outfits, using the invisible texture trick, and so on. In the next tutorial, we will cover using PSDs to create armatures automatically and extract the textures out of them. That will be all for this tutorial. See you next time!